Karibu.
Bienvenidos.
Bienvenue.
Bem-vindos.
Welcome to Speaking Our Minds, a podcast where we take mental health back to basics, simplifying the conversation for all walks of life.
Welcome back to our podcast, Speaking Our Minds on the topic of mental health. I am your host, Leah Elliot, behavioral health specialist with the Nashua Division of Public Health and Community Services, and I am a licensed social worker. Today is our third episode, and we will focus on anxiety. The number one role of our brain is to keep us alive. Our brains are keeping us alive in ways we're not even aware of, such as breathing, circulating blood throughout our bodies, digesting food, and blinking. We all have a biological response when we feel threatened or in danger. Some anxiety is helpful, such as feeling worried about a big test or a game or event. That anxiety helps motivate us to work hard or to avoid a dangerous event. However, a person is typically able to access tools to help them manage through the activity so they can meet their goals and expectations. Anxiety disorder is when someone has irrational fears or their fears negatively impact their ability to meet expectations in their personal and professional lives. The most important thing to remember in regards to anxiety is that the person does not need to actually be in a life or a death situation to experience anxiety. Anxiety can be real, perceived, or imaginary. Anxiety is the brain's response to what that person believes is a threatening situation. Because anxiety is both experienced in the brain and in the body, symptoms can be emotional or physical. Emotional symptoms include feelings of apprehension or dread, feeling tense or jumpy, restlessness or irritability, or anticipating the worst and being watchful for signs of danger. Physical symptoms can include a pounding or racing heart and shortness of breath, upset stomach, sweating, tremors, twitches, headaches, fatigue, and insomnia, and an upset stomach, frequent urination, or diarrhea. Mindfulness is a very positive way to keep the brain in the moment and not responding to a perceived threat. Our brains receive information from our five senses: what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. So, for example, if there was a fire in the building the person was in, their senses would alert them to that fire. They would see flames or smoke or people running. They would either hear fire alarms or fire trucks approaching and could smell smoke or touch something hot. As most of us participate in fire drills to help us in the event of an emergency, the brain knows what those signals mean and knows that the body must respond. Mindfulness helps to keep us to remain in the moment and not allow our brains to get distracted by stimuli that might cause us to feel threatened. Grounding techniques can also help. One common grounding technique is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. So if someone is experiencing anxiety, it is helpful to name 5 things they can see, 4 things they can feel, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and 1 thing they can taste. If someone experiences anxiety often, it can be helpful to carry around a piece of candy or gum to focus on when they are experiencing anxiety. So let's talk about trauma. So we're going to go back to the fire in the building. If a person experienced a fire in their past where they were hurt so badly, their brain may respond differently than a person who had never experienced being in a real fire and was never injured by one. This is what we refer to as trauma. The brain remembers, as it is the job of the brain to keep us alive. And trauma is stored in our senses. So the person who is injured in the fire will react differently than the person who is not, because their brain is already activated for that threat. For people who have grown up in violent households or communities that have a lot of violence, that person's brain is often on high alert for stress. In these cases, this high alert can distract their brain from being in the moment and learning. The brain will always prioritize safety over learning and thinking. In an emergency, the brain puts all its energy into keeping the body going and moving. When a person's brain receives a signal that there is a threat, their body releases a chemical called adrenaline. Adrenaline speeds up the lungs and the heart, which is why breathing becomes rapid and the heart beats fast. The brain is intending for that person to run or fight. But if the threat does not require movement, adrenaline is being sent throughout the body but not being used. Therefore, it can cause a person to experience a panic attack. So if you are looking at a distressful message that you received on an email, or you get that dreaded email from your boss, like, can I talk to you after this meeting? Then your brain senses that you're in danger and is going to send that adrenaline throughout your body to help you balance that threat. But if you're not in an actual threatened situation where you're going to run or fight, those chemicals don't get dispersed, and therefore they're just coursing throughout your body, which can lead people to having a panic attack. So grounding techniques are things that can be used once a person is already experiencing anxiety. Mindfulness practiced regularly is more preventative and helps the brain not to respond so quickly to those perceived threats, and instead take a moment to identify that there is no actual threat, that the person is safe and they are experiencing an overwhelming emotion, and then use a coping skill to help cope with that emotion. Sometimes a person who has experienced trauma may develop what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. As their brain was activated to threat and the brain remembers threatening things, the brain may respond to stimuli and associate it with danger. So, for example, oftentimes some war veterans can be triggered by fireworks, as fireworks can sound like gunshots. The brain then believes the person is in a dangerous situation as they were in the past, and the brain alerts that person to the threat by physically responding and sending that adrenaline throughout the body. So there are typically 3 ways a person might respond when they believe they're in a dangerous situation: flight, fight, or freeze. For some people who have experienced trauma, the freeze response is how they respond. This is what people sometimes call dissociation. I like to refer to it as going into a turtle shell. If the brain is not aware of the threat, then in some ways the brain decides that there is no threat and the person is safe. So, for example, some people who have experienced abuse, this may have been their only way to protect themselves from violence. So the brain is led to believe it is a good response to a threat or harm. They may not have been in a situation to run or fight. One thing that I found interesting to learn is that when a person believes they are in a threatening situation, their brain sends adrenaline throughout the body, which speeds up a lot of organs, but it does shut down digestion. So if a person is in actual danger, it's more important for them to run than it is for the body to digest that meal they ate earlier. It just seems so fascinating how the body is set up to help keep us alive. And it explains why people often feel sick to their stomach when they are stressed or anxious, or might vomit before a performance on stage or a big hockey game. So the best way to treat anxiety is to be as proactive as possible. It is good to make a list or mental note of triggers or situations that the brain may see as threatening. So, for example, if someone becomes anxious when they fly in a plane, they may bring things on the plane to use to distract their senses so the brain is not alerted to the threat of flying. Some people who have been diagnosed with anxiety disorder or panic disorder can take medications to slow the heart down. Those medications, if not taken as directed, can be abused and make the heart go slower than we want to, which could potentially lead to death. It is very important for you to talk to your doctor about whether medication is the best and safest form of treatment, and to only take anxiety medication as directed by your doctor. If a person is struggling to manage their anxiety on their own, they can meet with a mental health professional to help provide an unbiased opinion or account of what the person might be experiencing. Often trying to reframe how we interpret situations or developing tools to help remind the brain that we are safe are things that can be used to decrease anxiety. So, for example, if a person was in a bad car accident where they were hurt, their brain might associate the car with danger, and that person might experience anxiety when the person gets near the car. In these situations, a mental health professional might help a person to take small steps to help retrain their brain to believe that that car is safe. This is what we call exposure therapy. The mental health professional might recommend that a person sit in a different spot than they were when they got into the accident, or go in the car at a different time of day or for a very short period of time. Oftentimes, people avoid situations they perceive as dangerous. However, until the brain is retaught that a situation is not always dangerous, the brain will remember what it was taught. I like to say that we have to save as the fear, like a Word document. So not by avoiding a fear, but being able to save as that file in the brain and tell yourself that it is no longer dangerous and you are safe. Some depression medications taken daily and not in response to an anxious feeling can help with ongoing feelings of anxiety. So as usual, the Nashua Division of Public Health and Community Services offers trainings in how to distribute Narcan, as well as the importance of using first-person language. The Nashua Division of Public Health and Community Services is also able to provide mental health first aid trainings to community partners. Please call 603-589-4538 if you are interested in scheduling a training. If you or a loved one are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call the New Hampshire Rapid Response Line at 1-833-710-6477 or 988. Thank you.
This has been a Fresh Gen Multimedia production. Thanks for listening.